Okay, hello everyone. Welcome in the room and on Zoom. We are going to begin and we are going to be starting with the theme of today. This session is building equity in agritourism. And we are going to be starting. I'd like to invite Dr. Kumar Bhatta from Kyushu University Institute of Asian and Oceanic Studies to the podium to begin.
Hello, good morning. My name is Kumar and I came here from all the way Japan. I am here to talk about our model community-based homestay in Nepal. Actually, I was brought up in Nepal. That's why I focused this study in Nepal as well. This study was conducted with Professor Roman, who is from Poland. Today, I will talk about these topics. Since I believe most of you know Nepal, but let me have some brief introduction of Nepal. It's a small country. It's around 6 times of Vermont. It's pretty small and it has population of 29.5 million. The main occupation is agriculture. More than 2/3 of the Nepalese people are in agricultural sector, but its contribution to national GDP is very low. That means we need to increase the income of the farmers. This is the map of Nepal, and we can divide this map roughly in three parts. For instance, we have very big differences in the altitude. It starts from the 60 meters around here. Oh, I'm sorry. Around here, 60 meters, and it goes 8,800 meters here, which is Mount Everest, and it can be divided into 3 parts. The lower parts, from here to here, it's around 100 meters from the sea level, which is called the Terai and Shivalik. Then next one goes up to here, which is around 5,000 meters from 1,000 meters. This is middle mountain and high mountains. Then from 5,000 meters to above, we can have snow all the time, and which is high mountains in Nepal. Talking about the tourism activities in Nepal, they are concentrated only in some of the specific destinations, although we have pretty good tourism resources. The big circle here means more concentrated tourism activities, and small circle means less tourism activities. Talking about the tourism resources in Nepal, we have 8 top highest mountains in Nepal, which in the world, which is over 8,000 meters, including Mount Everest. We have 300 plus peaks which are already open for the expedition, which are over 6,000 meters. 15% of the total land is covered by snow every time. We have 44% of the jungle, 44% area is covered by jungle. We have 600 plus rivers for the whitewater rafting and whitewater activities in Nepal. We also have different popular trekking trails, national park, wildlife reserves, and so on. And only the national parks and wildlife reserves itself covers 23% in Nepal. We also have many religious and cultural destinations as well. We have pretty good tourism resources in Nepal, but the problem is tourism activities are concentrated in some of the specific destinations, which makes less contribution to the poor people. The tourism contribution do not reach to the lower level, and the tourism resources are not fully utilized as well. Therefore, we need to diversify tourism activities in different rural areas, and we need to utilize we need to utilize the rural resources as well. due to the less economic opportunities, especially in the rural areas, people don't want to stay there and they want to move. They move from the rural destinations. Yes, we all know that the tourism development in different destinations contributes directly for the economic opportunities to the local people, and it attracts the young people. Out of the many tourism types, agritourism promise more directly to the local people and to the farmers. We need to develop agritourism in different destinations. We knew that the rural rural destinations of developing countries has different uh, huge potentials of tourism development, but due to the lack of the knowledge of the farmers, they cannot develop their own tourism, agritourism by themselves. Therefore, they need external supports in terms of monetary or training or different kind of supports they need. There may be another question that why don't we import agritourism from developed countries, but it's difficult to implement as it is in developing countries because of the paying capacity of the guest and expectation, quality maintained, and so many things. Therefore, we need to develop authentic agritourism based on the available resources in the destinations. Therefore, I conducted a case study of a model community-based homestay in Nepal and presented what can be done in agritourism in Nepal. A case study of Ghaleguan. I will come back about Ghaleguan, which is considered as a model village tourism, a model rural tourism village in not only in Nepal, in South Asia. This Ghaleguan is located in Annapurna Conservation Area, which is also which is in big tourism concentrated areas. This is the photo of Ghaleguan. We can see which is located in the top of the hill, and the height is around 2,700 from the sea level. And the background of village is it is surrounded by green forest, and we can see the mountainous range which can be viewed all the year round. White mountains in the background. There it attracts more tourists. What is Ghaleguan then? Ghale is the Tibeto-Burman people living in this area, and Gaon means the village. That means Ghale people residing in the village. That is Ghaleguan in Nepalese language. And this village started community-based homestay in 2000, and it is now managed by Ghaleguan Tourism Management Committee, which is GTMC, and it has 42 houses directly involved in homestay right now, and it has more than 300 beds to the tourist. The village has 2 private hotels as well, but they also have community-based the homestay rooms, 2 homestay rooms in each. A British ex-army brought this concept in the village in 2000, and the motto of the village was local food in local way. That means they wanted to serve their local traditional food to the tourist in a local way. In the beginning, they formed GTMC, and it is responsible for quality control, tourist management, event management, as well as promotion of the village. All the 42 houses, they provide almost similar quality of food and services to the tourist. Tourists cannot select where they want to stay, but the GTMC decides where tourists are going to stay in that particular day, and they provide 2 person each for the homestay. This is the number of tourist arrival in the village. We have some up and downs. We had big earthquake in 2015. That's why number of tourists dropped for the 2-3 years. Then it started to increase, and even COVID-19 didn't affect to this village, because this is this village is targeting only domestic tourists, and foreign tourist arrival is minimal. In this village, the most activities are community-based activities, because GTMC coordinates with the homestay members, different active groups, and village implement community-based activities. They have community-based sheep farming. They also organize cleaning every Saturday and once a month. Every Saturday, they clean their territory, homestay territory, like, I'm sorry. For instance, they clean, if the group are from here, they clean nearby here, and every Saturday they clean here, and every month they have cleaning program. They clean nearby surrounding sightseeing zones like here, and they go up the round, and they clean the whole destinations. They provide sightseeing as well. Similarly, they welcome tourists in the group. All the activities, that means community based in the village. They have a tea garden as well. They also provide cultural performances to the tourists. Also, GTMC launches different awareness campaigns, training for skill development to the local people, taking them to the educational tours, which increase their capabilities as well. And the profit from the community-based activities is divided equally among the members who participate in specific programs. They also have one-door tourism policy. Since tourists cannot decide where to stay, if they arrive in the village entrance, here is the village entrance, and they go to the GTMC office first. Then the GTMC decides where to stay tourist, and they send to the tourist to the homestay. GTMC also developed standard menu and focusing on the traditional cuisine. The menu, host can decide what to serve, but the standard should be maintained. For instance, if our menu contains 2 curry, the content of curry can be decided by the host, but they should serve 2 curries. If they do not serve these 2 curries, then they get penalties from the homestay of the GTMC office. They may stop sending tourists for 2-3 months, or even they cancel their membership as well. In this way, wherever guests stay, they eat almost same food and same menu accordingly, and pay the similar amount. For instance, if a guest stay in a B&B plan, they pay 500 rupees, which is almost around $4. And from this amount, GTMC collects 20% of the sales revenue as an income, which is the income of GTMC. And tourists can have peace of mind even if they separated into multiple groups, and they are there is no variation in price and quality of the services staying in a homestay. Another topic is additional income generation activities in the village. Of course, homestay is the main target of that village, but they also provide different services to the tourists. They provide cultural performances on demand, local sightseeing, hiking, trekking, and different activities. They charge rupees 500 per day. That means around $4. And they also have income from the tea garden. They also sell handicrafts from the village as well. Sorry. For the extra income generation, they have different strategies. They organize football tournament. They organize competitive events like local games as well. They organize different seminars, training, and workshops as well as. They also organize cultural performances, and once a year they organize festival, Ghaleguan festival, which is in Nepalese New Year. It's around April. They also work for natural conservation and cultural preservation. For the natural conservation, they plant tree together with Annapurna Conservation Area Project once a year. And they also, the GTMC takes villagers to the educational tours in different destinations, so that they can learn how the different destinations are working on nature conservation and preservation. And they motivate, the GTMC also motivates the participants to work nature friendly activities in the village. For the cultural preservation, GTMC made homestay guidelines focusing on the cultural preservation. They motivated local people to use local dresses where possible. They also established museum in the village. You can see here. And this museum, in this museum, they put their traditional items they are using and they were using. They also restored the king, their last king's statue in the Kale Park. They also renovated the nearby temple. They also restarted the almost abandoned community sheep farming in the village. And GTMC also spent substantial amount of income in nature conservation and cultural preservation. For the promotional activities, Ghaleguan heavily involved in promotional activities. Since its focus is domestic people, it makes promotional item in Nepali language first, then it distributes through different channels. It also organizes awareness campaigns, trainings for skill development to the local people, and so on. With the Nepal Tourism Board, it also distributes leaflets and brochures in different events. It has also some different promotional strategies. It invites popular leaders, like they invited president, they invited prime minister, and they also invite popular singers in the village, which increases the media attractions and people's participations, so that their news goes all the throughout the country and they get promoted. They also included their work in Class 8 textbook, which has also increased the attention of the local people or the people around the country. Let me conclude this study. Community-based activities and one-door tourism policy adopted in Ghaleguan has contributed to nature conservation, cultural preservation, and maintaining the quality of service in the village. It was able to restore its historical cultural identity, ultimately generating income out of it only because of the community involvement. Developing agritourism in different rural destinations first need to identify the local identities and historical, religious, as well as cultural attractions. Then this attraction should be developed from the tourism point of view and linked from the community integration perspective. The sanitation activities are conducted on a regular basis, and tree plantation carried out once a year are directly related to nature conservation. Therefore, not only community-based homestays, but also agritourism and other tourism destinations can contribute to ecological sustainability in the village. Since Nepal is a country of mountains, and tourism is a country of mountains, and trekking is the main attractions of tourism, the different villages can be linked through agritourism, and we can develop agritourism trail in Nepal. Thank you.
Thank you, Kumar. Okay, so next I'd like to invite Trevor Lane, Associate. Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you. I should have mentioned questions because of time. Questions can be put into the Huva app or around, as you see, Kumar around for the rest of the day. I would like to invite Trevor Lane, Associate Professor from Washington State University Extension, and Sanjay Rajan, founder of Konbit, to present on the topic of equity and the promising practice of agritourism.
Thank you. Good morning. Trevor Lane with Washington State University Extension is a state specialist in community and economic development. I came to know my good friend Sanjay here over the last couple of years as we work with 27 federally recognized tribes across 39 different counties. We have one of the first tribal extension offices in the state of Washington. I think it was the second in the nation. And as we look at food systems and we look at diversity and inclusion, thank you. Equity is an economic and political conversation. It's not an exercise in diversity and inclusion. And as we look at that landscape, we just wanted to have a conversation today. We're not going to present research. We're going to talk about data, how to use data, and what we know. We know what we know, and we know what we need to do. And on that note, let my friend introduce himself, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, so thanks, Trevor. So the way we got connected. Oh, yes, thank you. So the way we connected, I was part of a incubator called X-Genesis in Denver, and I launched Konbit coming out of it. Konbit is a climate action public benefit corporation, and what we do is focus on catalyzing food and energy sovereignty across Native American lands. I'm not a native, so non-native. I'm in fact an immigrant to US, and but it's been a evolutionary understanding and the relationship. Trevor is native, and how it's very important to think in terms of diversity. Different ideas are as much important coming from different parts of the world to make a more inclusive society. So that's me, Konbit, in terms of what we're going to talk about. I'm going to go into slide 2 this way. I think I did. Oh, okay. So maybe I can just cue and you can do it.
This one? I don't know. It's not working.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. So anyway, while we are figuring that out, we always hear about diversity. There was a lot of discussion about diversity, but we also need to think in terms of equity. And the last component is inclusion. All of this should be in the context of justice. So you hear a lot about JEDI. We specifically, Konbit focuses on Native American lands, rural Native American lands. All of them are food deserts. So how can you talk about agritourism when the ag component is missing? Although there's a tourism component, right, with the gaming industry. So that's what we're trying to change. Cool. History of farming as we know it, as you can see from 1900s all the way to 2000, how there's been a dramatic change. Less than 1.9% of the people actually work in agriculture, and about 1% of that is in agritourism. So real small component. But we feel there's an opportunity to change all of this. As you can see, there's a downward trend, of course, in terms of farming. The way we can change is, you might have heard a lot about decentralization of everything. You hear about DAOs, decentralized autonomous organization, because in a global world, people can work from anywhere. So it's a very interesting concept. A lot of it is used in the crypto space, which for a lot of people may not even understand. It is essentially decentralized finance, because decision is not made by a central body. So we are saying, hey, there's a wonderful opportunity to think in terms of ag also, who are the producers, big producers, right? 4 or 5. Instead, if we flip agriculture as we know it and think in terms of decentralization and focus on micro farms, small farms, each connected together, that would make a big difference also in terms of ag tourism. So sort of first fix the problem in terms of agriculture as we know it, and then automatically there can be a connection also to tourism tied to it. And it could have a huge impact on the economy. Next slide. Can you click it? Yes, I can try. Sorry about that. Okay, so we talked about data, right? As I said, Konbit is about food and energy sovereignty. Energy is one of the highest that people pay for in Native American lands, and food also, the price point is really high. Data sovereignty is also super critical. And there's a lot of discussion about PII, private information and personal information, not sharing that, GDPR. But keeping that in mind, especially in the context of the unique relationship that tribal nations have with the federal government and in the context of being within US, it's interesting. People should own the data, the tribe should own the data. We wanted to use some data points in order to make exemplify this and also show how it can drive decisions. Key is number of farms, as you can see, downward trend. Obviously, I've been focused on food sovereignty. With COVID-19, what has happened? There's been a big upward ramp actually in terms of people who are food insecure. 1 in 9 globally is now food insecure. In US, 50 million people are actually now food insecure. And in Native American lands, 2 million plus are food insecure, and all the 574 federally recognized nations are deemed food deserts. So that's important data points. And interestingly, 9 out of 10 farms in US are small, and they make less than 350K. So the context of this micro farm is very interesting. You can have a whole bunch of micro farms, which implies in terms of the economic impact, huge. So again, flipping ag as we know it on its head, instead of benefit being to few people, why not benefit being to the community at large? Next slide, I'm gonna try. Oh, worked this time. Although I didn't press anything. On the flip side, right, in terms of equity, guess what? The disparity, 95% of the farmers, Caucasian. 1/3 of the farm operators are women. Less than 1% is actually deemed organic. I mean, you might find different data points on this. This is what I pulled out from USDA. This plays really well into the context of what we're talking about, equity, and that is what we should enable. Next slide.
So as we can see here, the promising practice of agritourism is a growing trend. It's only going to continue to increase. We saw this during COVID, despite all the shutdowns and restrictions, people were trying to get out, so they were going to farms. And this had a big impact on our rural and tribal communities. Agritourism is largely undefined. And I think the easiest way to wrap your mind around it is it's to attract people to a rural area or a farm or a ranch for education and entertainment. And when you kind of see it through that lens and you understand that perspective, it helps you to understand what equity means, how we get to diversity and inclusion. And this growing trend is something we've got to really get our mind around as to this decentralized landscape, because broadband and tech transfer is happening at an alarming rate right now. And we need, through citizen science, community intelligence, to prop up our communities to be able to make intelligent decisions to navigate this landscape. And this is important because there's documented evidence through the USDA of systemic and systematic discrimination. And one of the things that we see on tribal lands is Indians can't get loans because they don't own the land. The tribe does. So how do you get to the startup point? And there's barriers, and there's 3 main barriers that preclude people from entering this space. And if you can get past those 3 barriers, which is rules, regulations, liability, and access to capital. And these are growing problems that you don't really, if you don't plan and you just try to go after it and you don't use data, the costs add up fast. And then there's permits and other things that complicate that landscape. So as we look at this promising practice and growing landscape, one of the things that we have to keep in mind is the economic impact of these small farms. When aggregated, has a huge impact on these communities. Next slide, please. So as you can see, as we'll see in the next few slides, the agritourism landscape overlays the agricultural landscape. And you can see the changes that are happening right now. And just by using existing data, we don't need more studies. The information's out there. We know what we need to do and we know how to do it. We just need to move from thought into action. Next slide, please. So this is where the hotspots are. And you can see how they overlay with ag growth. Next slide, please. I think this one's yours.
Yeah. So of course, as you can see, this is historically what has happened in terms of USDA. We want to use this as only an anchor point. You know, we can spend all the time talking about problems, but instead we want to get to solutions. But it's important to understand the problem landscape. So really, there has been institutionalized racism. Interestingly, also, you might hear about farm workers, farm hands, but also in terms of my wife's actually from Wyoming, and out there in the ranches, the hands are gauchos who come from either Argentina or elsewhere, and they are, you know, spend the time in the winter and across the whole season and pretty much make minimum wage. So there's this disparity that we're creating in our system as we know it. Fundamentally, that needs to change. Any other thoughts? Okay. So now on the positive side, right? This is very recent, as you can see, USDA making fundamental changes in food system. They're talking about equity. Secretary Vilsack the other day was presented, and especially with the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a whole bunch of money, both in the context of energy and food sovereignty, that is going to make a difference fundamentally, we feel, in rural America. Another analogous example I want to take is mixed income housing in communities. Those communities actually are more vibrant. So in the same sense, if you think about mixed participation by more people and different ethnicities in agriculture and agritourism would make the whole country and the whole space vibrant, especially rural America vibrant. That I think is a very important point. We want to always look at analogous examples where things are actually working to make a difference in terms of looking into the future. Next slide. I come from the business side of things. So there are some really bold measures that organizations are taking. I like to say we ourselves are taking a bold measure. If you notice, I said Konbit is a public benefit corporation. We are a Delaware-based C Corp, but we have mandated that food equity and sovereignty around the globe is a specific benefit we're going to always focus on. We don't want to get bought by a big company and then basically, because our work is going to be primarily in Native American lands, now they indirectly have access to the land, right? So we are very clear about aspects of how to do business. The other interesting things you might have heard about, there's B Corps, benefit corps. That's a new way of looking at things. PBC, I talked about. An interesting other angle is purpose. There is old ways of doing things known as trusts. Normally, when rich people wanted to maintain their assets and give it down to their family members, they would maintain in a trust. But PPT is a perpetual purpose trust. So you put profit driving further the purpose. So a PPT enables, so for example, a PPT can potentially become an owner of an organization. That's how we are looking at it. Although we are a public benefit corporation, I still own most of the shares of our company, but I'm going to shift it into a trust. And essentially the employees, communities we serve in, and strategic partners who come on would actually become co-owners of Konbit. Again, a different way of looking at things because capitalism, as I know it, doesn't work for everyone. So we need to fundamentally change how capitalism works as well. So those are important points. And I think you had to discuss about partnerships, how that's important.
So one of the important things about the partnerships is strategic alignment around policy development. And through extension and through medical colleges, And through other scholarly avenues, we just published on what food sovereignty could look like and how organizationally and developmentally we can begin to look at this lens and step through these things. One of the important things about change in the field are these partnerships, these collaborations. And it's critical. And one of the reasons why we wanted to just have a conversation today is that we be decisive. We can't get so wrapped up in collaboration that we're not being decisive, but those collaborations are extremely critical. Next slide, please. So how do we get where we are? In Ferry County, where we live, it's extremely remote. The nearest corporate anything is about 60, 70 miles away. Everything is small business. We all know each other. I jokingly tell people who remind me I'm an outsider that my high school was bigger than our county seat. And I love it there. And the way that we've worked with the tribe through generations of hostility, like we're changing the landscape. And when I get asked all the time, how have you done this? Because I'm told what we've achieved with the farmers market, mapping our agritourism system is impossible. And I came at this from, we all know what the woes are. We know what they are. So let's focus on a couple wins. That takes us back to data. So we formed a broadband action team. And through that broadband action team, we're getting into precision ag now. We're helping our ISPs avoid overbuilds and underbuilds. That's just going to help our small farms. And if you order on Amazon, then you have the internet at your doorstep. So we need to start you have the world at your doorstep. You have a global economy at your doorstep. We need to start thinking about what that means for our communities. And so through this lens, we've been able to create conversations by focusing on where the win is, and the woes are just kind of taking care of themselves. And through this process, that's how Sanjay and I met. Next slide.
Yeah. So we're almost coming to the end. I do want to say, we talked about public-private partnership, right? Public institution, private, coming together, and from different ethnicities as well. So that's sort of a living example, if you want to say. But I want to very briefly also touch on microfarms and agritourism. Native American Agricultural Fund actually put out a paper saying focus should be on creating regional food hubs. So they talked about 10 different regional food hubs based on where Native Americans largely live. And the intent is, there is the tourism, as I said, not necessarily the ag component tied to ag tourism in Native American lands. So that is what we want to amplify. And the intent is, with the 10 hubs, you can potentially have sub hubs, and which each of them has a network of microfarms that are managed, and food, especially food that are culturally significant. A lot of the ancient varieties of crops we never see. Corn as we know it, there's one type. But if you go to the Navajo Nation, there are particular types of corn that actually grew really well in the dry climate. It'd be great to bring that potentially, with permission from the people of the nation, into a wider market. So there's a wonderful opportunity of telling stories. All the communities we work in, it's all about telling stories. So I think it's a wonderful way agritourism can play a great role in terms of telling culturally significant aspects of agriculture and the stories as well. Yeah, and to wrap it up, basically, there's no future for sustainable food and farming without racial justice. And that's actually a cover, and this is where USDA at that point was complicit, but of course they're making changes as well. The great land robbery in terms of African-American farmers and their impact. Anyway, last slide. That's us. Happy to answer any questions, either one-on-one or as deemed. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sanjay and Trevor. And again, to any questions or to continue the conversation can happen on the Whova app. And now I would like to invite Chadley Hollas, researcher and consultant with Cultivating Tourism, to present on the topic of building community, tourism, and agriculture, the story of cooperative farming and tourism in Guatemala.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name's Chadley Hollas. I'm based in Texas, an independent researcher and consultant. I am going to talk to you about a study that I did, some interviews in Guatemala, actually about 5 or 6 years ago, but I've kind of reopened the interview file and have started looking at it through different lenses. I'll talk about a little bit more about that, but instead of telling you about De La Gente and the people there and the work they're doing in Guatemala, I asked them to be a part of this. They couldn't be here in person, so they made a video. And Axel is their tourism leader, and I'll let him talk through his video.
I can see it here. Oh, you know what?
Can you go to the right?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah. You can just play it from there.
De La Gente is a non-profit organization, and we work with 8 cooperatives located in different regions in Guatemala. In our model, the farmers or community members themselves are the ones who become guides with their own communities, showing their knowledge, culture, way of farming, and living. But specifically, we work tourism just with one of those 8 cooperatives. And our vision for the future is bring tourism to each of the regions and all of the cooperatives following a comprehensive model of growth. When talking about comprehensive growth model, we must also talk about a circular economy where the community itself generates jobs and reinvests in health, education, training to provide a quality service that in turn generates more income and more job opportunities. Our model is based on fair compensation and wages. That is to say that when a person takes tour with our organization, we guarantee a fair payment to each of the workers involved around the tours, ensuring that the farmer receives the largest percentage for his or her work and knowledge. Beyond the customer satisfaction, we make sure that clients know they were part of contributing to the communities. Additionally, it's an opportunity to sell their products directly and obtain clients who continue to consume their coffee in the different countries around the world. In our community tourism program, we also offer cooking classes because of gender norms in the community. Women typically acquire the skill to be a chef. In our Pepian cooking class, they have the opportunity to show the knowledge, to show the ability that they have to cook the food at home Usually in Guatemala, that is not so important. We don't give the value that they deserve. The domestic laborers don't have that value here in Guatemala. But nowadays, with this cooking class, we are adding that value to the people who work with us. Usually, those women show us not just a cooking class, they teach us how they live, how they teach the children that they are raising up. Our cooking class is more than a cooking class. Between the products that we have a peanut butter workshop. This store is guide for women's too. Women's that they grow their own peanuts. They take us to the fields to see how they plant the peanuts, how they process this product to make the peanut butter. At the end of this tour, they show us the artisanal products that they offer to sell. Those products are a base for the economy that they have at home. In De La Gente, we are offering something that is more than just a tour. We offer authentic experiences and exchange. The producers and community spot visitors from other countries, they both learn about different cultures, different ways of thinking, and different ways of living. For visitors, it is an enriching experience to see the lifestyle of a producer, the hard work, and at the same time, they understand the dignified and fair treatment that this work deserves. All these would be empty and meaningless words if we were not transparent. That's why we're really transparent about showing where the money goes. When a visitor takes a tour, the income is divided as follows. Producers, 34%. That is the huge percentage. Operation expenses from De La Gente, 23%. English, Spanish translators, 19%. Transportation, 14%. And credit card fee and other expenses, 10%. That is the way that De La Gente divide the income, the money from the tours. The recovery has been slow. In the time we did not sit idly by, thanks to the support of our programs, we had the opportunity to offer virtual tours. We continued with the sales of roasted and ground coffee. When a customer purchases a coffee subscription for a roasted coffee, we have the following breakdown. 38% of this income is for the producers, 20% for roasting packaging, 80% is the operation cost for De La Gente, 10% is investing in marketing, 6% is to cover the exportation expenses, 8% is for labels and bags. Now, as I explained, the recovery in tourism sector has been slow. We have implemented biosafety protocols since the most important thing is protecting visitors and producers' partners and their families. In the past 14 months, since resuming tourism activities, we have had 0 known infections, which indicates that our precautions are working. 1 year after the pandemic, we can say that tourism is once again contributing to improving the quality of life of all the communities in which we work. In the last 6 months of the year 2021, we received 400 people, a total of 126 tours, which channeled $8,700 back to the communities which we work. In seeing these numbers, but also working alongside the communities, I can say firsthand that it's possible to have a community tourism program and agritourism focused, sustainable, ethical, and focus on the well-being of the community and fairly compensation farmers for their knowledge. For the La Gente, work with tourism is the best part of our lives, which one coffee bean, we provide opportunities for the farmers. Thank you for learning. Thank you for inviting us to this great opportunity to show how we work with the farmers. And if you have any question, please let us know.
And Axel should be on the Zoom right now. So if you want to ask questions about their work, I encourage you to do so afterwards. I'm not going to have too long of a presentation. So, but anyway, so I didn't really know how to start this. I guess I should tell you a little bit more how I stumbled upon De La Gente specifically. You know, De La Gente is basically they serve as a marketing organization in a sense for the tourism component of the work they do, and for the coffee promotion of the actual coffee product. The San Miguel Escobar Cooperative and the other 7 cooperatives that they work with are independent farmer-owned cooperatives. They work alongside De La Gente, and they pay them those fees that he discussed in order to help unify the coffee under one brand, sell it for higher prices. There's a lot of information about that on their website. And the tourism component to me was very unique. I was looking at the time, I was looking for an experience that tourists were having that were led by the host. I wasn't necessarily specifically working under the framework of agritourism or under agriculture or looking for a farm in particular, but honestly, most of the stuff I was stumbling upon and the people I were talking to were agritourism type organizations, even if they weren't promoting themselves in that way. And so I found them at the time. It's been cool to see the organization develop over time. At the time, they actually had Anglo-American leaders in the De La Gente organization, but since they're completely Guatemalan, which has been really cool to see. And so things have changed a little bit over the years since I originally collected the data, but everything we're talking about remains true. And so I went there, interviewed 14 farmers, and we spent at least an hour with each of them. And basically my goal was to understand more broadly, not just on the economic side, but how are these intimate experiences with the tourists affecting the way they see themselves as a farmer? And that was my big overarching question. And so if you want to click the next slide, this is the broad framework that I was using. This is a very brief summarization. If you want to read the literature review, it's published, so we can talk about that later. But I put agritourism in parentheses because, again, I wasn't using agritourism necessarily originally when I went through this. But as we know, with tourism and all of the prefixes, there's a lot of overlap between them. And so in this particular experience for tourists, it was an intimate experience and it was public, meaning it was with someone else. And they're having these public experiences with another farmer. And that led for room for opportunities for role adoption. You heard Axel say this, we did not coordinate it, but you heard him say, I said, I need a video and send me whatever you want. And he talks about how the farmers are teachers. He talks about how they're leading the tours. He talks about how they're adopting these roles that are not farmer. And so I, as a researcher, went in and put it and looked at these interviews through this lens and tried to understand the role verification process. So, and through that, we can see if there's changes in the self-esteem in that way. So on the next slide, this is the role verification process. It stems from Kasten Burke, their research, but it's my very simple sort of graphical depiction of the process. Starts at the top with either positive, negative, or negative self-esteem. You have the opportunity for role adoption, whether that's teacher, leader, tour guide, caretaker was one of the things that we found, which was completely unexpected. And then you have the role verification. So they're either going to be told either directly or from the response of the other person, whether or not that role is verified with themselves, right? If they're teaching someone something and the tourist acts like that person shouldn't fit in that role, they're not a teacher, they're going to decline that interaction. They're going to reject them in some way. And then the farmer will either, or the teacher or whoever they are, they will internalize that role. It'll be a positive thing or a negative thing. Okay, they're going to say, okay, I feel good about that. And they're going to continue this process. It'll increase their self-esteem or decrease it. And that's the broad process that Kasten Burke created or sort of described about building or destroying self-esteem. And so what I found in these interviews is that there were several different roles that these farmers embraced. And I've heard that I'm just a farmer line a lot. And, you know, it's sort of this, what do I know? I'm just a farmer. And we all know that's you try to ignore it or address it and try to say, that's not really, I don't know what you're talking about. There's nothing wrong with being a farmer. What I've learned in this experience is that through these intimate experiences where, and again, I can't generalize it, it was a very specific qualitative study, but in this specific experience where the farmer was able to lead the tour, to meet the tourist and really take ownership of the experience and have an intimate interaction with the tourist, they're able to adopt these other roles. They're not relying on some leader or some other person. They're able to embrace roles outside of being a farmer. And yeah, that's basically it. And so in the paper, we talk about the each of the different roles that we saw them undertake and how that is through their comments, through their storytelling, we're able to see how that changed the way they saw themselves as a farmer, as a caretaker, as a Guatemalan in a global society. Really, really interesting. So that's all I have. Is Axel on there? I can. Okay. Can you put him on there? Axel, do you mind if we try to put him on the screen? Oh. Axel, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. Well, yeah. So any questions for me or Axel? Either one.
Algo pasó.
Oh, it's just displaying me then.
Are you also attracting Guatemalans to your farm visits, or is it primarily international tourists?
We can receive different kinds of tourists here, even Guatemalan people or Latin American people. We receive international people too. Then for us, it's a pleasure to attend everybody here.
I have a very technical question actually, because I'm living in Honduras, I have a business there. And if we would do something like this, or how is it in Guatemala about taxes? Because in Honduras, you would pay 19% about taxes about a tour. And that's just a technical question. Do you have that problem, or do you have a special arrangement? And
Since we work as a non-profit organization, we need to present some taxes, but not that amount of taxes here in Guatemala. Then anyways, we have a taxes table here. Then we need to present all the taxes, but we work as a non-profit organization.
I'm coming at this as a avid coffee consumer. So I'm familiar with equal exchange. I'm just thinking through from like a consumer perspective, like how do you learn about these things? And I don't know if this is a separate, if there's a connection with equal exchange, or is that like a competitive organization, or is it complementary, or is it just another example of kind of a cooperative for coffee?
Axel, would you like to answer that, or I don't know. Do you know what equal exchange is? Well, I will say, just from my perspective, that's sort of what De La Gente is. It's giving the farmers a direct path. And I know Equal Exchange does something similar, but this is their Guatemalan brand, right? The brand is not owned by the farmers. I think it's technically owned by the I don't know how the business structure is for De La Gente, but it's sort of a replacement for Equal Exchange, I guess. Instead of being a part of a larger, organization like that, it's completely contained within the organization and the brand and all of that. And they do direct sales. Like, I think they, at least, I don't know if they're still selling through Amazon or not, but they were at one point. They work with coffee shops around the US to, like, they'll sell them green coffee or roasted coffee. I think most of the time they ship green, and then people roast it themselves if they want. And so De La Gente just turns into sort of a replacement for something like Equal Exchange or any of these larger, I don't even know what they are. Marketing organizations. If you have something to add, Axel, you can.
Yeah, it's a direct trade usually. At least selling coffee is directly to the roasteries in USA. And the farmers receive a big percentage of that. With the tourists, when you buy coffee directly from them, that is a direct trade. You can buy directly from them. All that money is for them. Then the model that we use is very complicated because we take some parts of direct trade, some parts of fair trade. Then we mix them to make a really good deal for the farmers and a really good deal for everybody taking this tour or buying our coffee.
Okay, and we are at time. Chadley, did you have any closing? Okay, so all of our presenters are back in the room. I'd like to give them a round of applause. Thank you all.